Turns it on.
Perfect.
Test, test, test. Test, test, test. So.
Tap that. All right. Good morning. Hello, everyone. If you can hear me, clap once. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Durham. We could do a little better than that. Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to be here, especially here in the Bull City. We are about to get started. I'm going to introduce your MC for today. But my name is Ben Kittleson. I'm on the board of directors for ELGL, and I work here at the City of Durham in the budget office. So I hope you enjoy your time. We've got a full day of learning and networking, and anyone that has been to an ELGL event before doesn't need this reminder, but for those of you that are new, we encourage tweeting. If you're looking down at your phone, that is, you won't get a frown. We want you to share what you're learning today with the people back home in your organizations or in your life, and that helps amplify our message and amplify your speakers that you see today. So we're really excited. We've got a jam-packed agenda. And so we're going to get it going. So Eric Marsh is our MC today. So if you see him coming up, it means we're about to move on to the next thing or get going to the next session. He is a strategic initiatives analyst for Durham County, and a great friend and coworker. So I roped him into doing this. So treat him kindly. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eric Marsh. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I was trying to decide between the podium and the handheld, just for the height stuff. But I hope you're well. Everybody good? Good to the innovators, the disruptors, the analysts, and all of the above, right? I hope everybody is ready for an awesome conference. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Ben, for the awesome introduction. He's been my partner in crime for about 2 years on Innovate Durham, so y'all should check that out. Before we bring up Mayor Bell, I have a couple of announcements for you all. We want to get the bullet points out the way really quickly. First of all, your agenda. He mentioned your agenda. You don't have to worry about losing your agenda, right? Because you're going to use your agenda pen, your Pengenda. Did you get your Pengenda? I think some of you are like, why did I get this pen? Why does it look this way? But if you look inside of your pen and you open it, your agenda's in there, okay? That's innovation, right? You know how many times you've got that pen and lost it, and you're just like, I write with it, but I like Sharpies, since we all like sticky notes and stuff. So make sure you keep up with your Pengenda. We also want to thank our sponsors that helped us with breakfast this morning. And that's GFOA, that's the Government Finance Officer Association, and then also CPS HR Consulting. CPS HR Consulting was also the sponsor for the nice reusable plastic cutlery that you received on the swag table outside when you came in. So thank them for that. We also want to recognize our volunteers. Can we have our student volunteers stand up? I'm not gonna put you on the spot and have you, introduce yourselves, but as someone who also got my MPA and was also looking for a job, when I was finishing my MPA, I encourage you all to find them, seek them out. They're like cheers. They're holding up their water and stuff. So do that. Also, when, like Ben mentioned, we are a mobile-friendly conference. Okay, so don't feel bad if you have your phone up while you're in the conference. And also, we are so mobile-friendly. If you look at your lanyard, even people with Androids have a charging cable that has been provided. Okay, that is a universal charging cable for people with Androids and iPhones. That is very inclusive, and that is awesome. As you see, I'm going to be kind of lighthearted this whole time, okay? So I need y'all to come with me and kind of bring energy to you. And also, we want to shout out Miss Angelica Wendell of NRC. So she's going to be doing headshots. So find her. Is she here? Is she in the room right now? I will make sure I point her out. So what she's going to do is she's going to be taking people's headshots. It could be inside, or she even brought proper lighting and all that stuff. And then she'll be uploading, sending out a link, and everybody will be able to grab their headshot off to put on your LinkedIn, to your Facebook, your digital resumes, and all that stuff. But that's enough for my announcements. I am going to introduce to you all Mayor Schewel. He's going to come on up, and he's going to be our keynote for this morning. Mayor Schewel is super awesome. He's the reason why I put on a tie today, because he always wears a bow tie. The only time I've not seen him not wear a bow tie is when he's literally running the city. He's a runner, runs about 3 times a week. The first time I met him was a 5K that he sponsored, the Schewel Challenge, on American Tobacco Trail. So, Mayor Schewel, come on up. I want to give you the floor. Give him a round of applause.
Eric reminded me that he beat me. Yeah, we ran together, but he won. And I had to buy everybody that beat me an adult beverage of their choice, which is fine, but you won't beat me next year, Eric, is all I'm going to say. I do run, but I'm very old and very slow, so I just encourage all of you all who are half my age to keep at it. Durham is a fabulous city, and we're so glad to have you here. Has some of you all enjoyed it already? Yeah. I've been mayor for a year and a half, so I take full credit for everything that you see. But we're really glad to have you, so glad to have you in Durham. We're so proud that you've chosen our city for your meeting. This is a fantastic group, and I have been learning about it recently, and I can see from everyone here that it's just going to be a fabulous day, fabulous time together. Ben Kittleson, I appreciate Ben. He invited me to speak today, asked me to spell out my vision for Durham in the coming years, and I'm going to do that. But first I want to take just a minute to talk about local government, the noble work in which each of you is engaged. We know people all across the country, whatever their political persuasion, believe that Washington is broken, and it is. That Congress can't get anything done, and that the presidency is awash in personal vendettas and angry tweet storms. I don't know about your state, but in North Carolina, our gerrymandered state legislature is enmeshed in deep and dangerous partisanship. And I think that's the reality that most people think about when they think about government. They think about our federal government and its condition and their state government and its condition. But in Durham and in your city, government, local government is working, and our residents know that. Those of you who are in this room are making sure that the garbage gets picked up on time every time. You're providing vaccines, and yes, we still need vaccines. You're improving the way that we triage emergency calls. You're reducing the response times to fires. You're figuring out how to keep our recycling program going in the face of the changing Chinese recycling market. You're inspecting buildings, you're balancing budgets, you're cutting costs. You're providing emergency funds and shelter. You're making sure that when our residents turn on their tap, they get as much water as they want to come out of that tap, that it's clean and that it tastes good every time. Washington might be broken, but local government works, and it works because of you. I know that one of the most important jobs as mayor, for me and for any mayor, is to simply cheer on the good work that you do. Our local government leaders, you're doing it every day, and most of my job, I would say, is to encourage that good work and to cheer it on, to defend it and to advocate for it. In Durham, local government is good government. It's efficient, it provides our core services at an incredibly high level, and as you will hear in a moment, it's innovative. I am so grateful for the 2,600 employees of the city of Durham, and I'm especially grateful for leaders like yourselves who have the ambition to keep improving local government performance every single day. And so on behalf of mayors and city council members and county commissioners everywhere, I want to thank you for that. Now let me talk, as Ben asked, a little about Durham. And I want to say, I know there are a bunch of Durham folks in this room, and you can sleep through this part. Go out, get an extra, honey bun or something, because you've heard me say it before. In my recent State of the City address, I said that our community has come together to forge a common vision for our future together, and here is that vision. We, the people of Durham, envision a prosperous, innovative, green, and welcoming city that thrives on diversity and difference, a city that puts racial and economic justice at the top of our civic agenda, that defends the vulnerable among us, that cherishes robust, respectful debate on difficult questions, that embraces nonviolence, that embodies the belief that all residents must have an opportunity to share in our newfound prosperity, a city that serves as a progressive beacon for the South and the nation. I believe in that vision with all my heart, and I want to talk to you about it, but first I want to tell you a story. It starts in 1889 in a little shtetl, a little town in what is now called Lithuania, then part of the Russian Empire. The little town was called Linkova, and there lived Elias and Bluma Schewel and their 3 small children. Elias was a yeshiva bacher, a student of the rabbinical teachings. In the Russian Empire, Jews were barred from owning land or farming, barred as well from the professions and from the universities. They were confined to living in a certain part of the Russian Empire called the Pale of Settlement. They were the victims of frequent pogroms, violent riots, often just after Easter. Elias Schewel, my great-grandfather, fled this anti-Semitic religious persecution to come to this country, crossing the Atlantic alone and arriving in Baltimore, where he was met by a representative of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society who told him that a man with his skills as a shochet, a kosher butcher, was needed to cut meat in the small Jewish community in Lynchburg, Virginia. So Elias moved to Lynchburg from Baltimore, and 6 months later sent for Bluma, his wife, and the children to join him. Bluma's baby boy was my grandfather Abraham, and I imagine her joining a group of travelers, some might call it a caravan, traveling overland to the port of Riga. With her children, she boarded a ship and sailed for the New World to join her husband, where they built a life together on the edge of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Elias and Bloomer were members of a despised minority fleeing persecution. They were refugees, undocumented immigrants with few skills and no English at all. But they dreamed of a better life, and they set out against all odds to find it here on these welcoming shores. This could not happen today. In Durham, the flow of refugees has slowed to a trickle due to the policies of the Trump administration. An immigrant fleeing persecution, arriving unannounced in Baltimore Harbor, would be turned away without a second thought. What has happened to our country that we deport hardworking people who have been living among us as friends and neighbors, that we forcefully divide families, that even people with documents are driven underground in fear? Recently, I organized 7 North Carolina mayors to sign a letter protesting the latest ICE raids to sweep our cities. But for our refugees and immigrant families living in Durham, it isn't the protest that I want to emphasize today. It is the love. In Durham, we do not build walls between nations or peoples. In Durham, no construimos muros entre naciones o pueblos. In Durham, te queremos si estás documentado o no documentado. Queremos que estés a salvo aquí. Queremos que vivas libre del miedo. Te damos la bienvenida a Durham con los brazos abiertos y corazones abiertos. Whatever message you are getting from Washington, D.C., in Durham, we want everyone to feel the welcoming embrace of a big-hearted city. All of you assembled here today revel, I am sure, in your city's diversity as we do in Durham. So here's the question for Durham and for all of you. As new people pour into Durham, and we have a net increase of 20 people every day, how are we going to make the city we love a city for all? One of the first things that we have to do, I believe, in Durham and in cities all across America is we've got to get policing right. When it comes to policing, we have to be able to do 2 things at once. We have to effectively fight violent crime at the same time that we win the trust of communities. These 2 goals are deeply intertwined, and we can't do one without the other. We know that every gunshot wound rips a hole not only in a victim, but also in a family, in a neighborhood, and in a community. I read the police watch reports every night, and I bet some of you all do as well, and every day brings with it a violent crime. We cannot let that stand. Of all the depredations visited upon us by federal and state governments, the most damaging is their prohibition on any common sense gun control. Unfortunately, this means we have to use every other resource at our command. So let me tell you how we're trying to change the culture and practice of policing in Durham to win the trust of our community. It starts with training. All of our officers now receive annual training in racial equity, domestic violence, and de-escalation. 45% of our patrol officers have received advanced crisis intervention training. And beginning in the fall of this year, every new officer who enters the department will receive this advanced training in crisis intervention. In many other ways, we're undergoing a dramatic shift in the way Durham is engaging in police work. Traffic stops in recent years have dropped by 2/3. Searches of cars have been cut in half, as have charges for drug violations. Our new misdemeanor diversion court has kept hundreds of first-time offenders free of a criminal record. These reforms are today making a positive difference in the lives of thousands of people, especially people of color. We are decriminalizing small acts and keeping thousands of people, especially young men of color, out of the criminal justice system and out of its lifelong consequences. But here's an important question. Are these reforms simply leading to more crime? Well, listen to the numbers and you can judge for yourself. We had a tough first quarter in 2019, but overall crime in Durham, and you know it's never a straight trend, it's always kind of like this, but overall crime in Durham is on an 18-year downward trend. In particular, 2018 saw a striking decline in crime. In all violent crimes in which a gun was used, including robberies and aggravated assaults, declined by 20% in Durham in 2018. Property crime continued to decline to its lowest level in 23 years. The trend in Durham is clear. Trust is up and crime is down. Trust. It's our currency, isn't it? It's our currency in local government. So let me talk about one way that we're trying to build it here in Durham. On many nights when I leave City Hall in the evenings, often at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, I see groups of people meeting in our conference rooms. The committed participants in our big, sprawling initiative in grassroots democracy called Participatory Budgeting. Here's my prediction. When this is over, we will be able to claim that Durham has created one of the best initiatives in direct democracy in the nation. The council, our city council, has set aside $2.4 million to be spent on projects chosen directly by our residents. 550 ideas were submitted, the majority by people of color, and city staff, people like you, and 100 volunteer budget delegates have vetted these projects and fleshed out some 50 full project proposals with detailed descriptions and budgets, which are now in front of the voters. Some of the projects in the running include bus shelters, crosswalks, tiny homes, and park improvements. And the budget delegates have prioritized those projects which benefit our underserved communities. Throughout this month, the month of May, all residents who are at least 13 years of age in Durham can vote for the projects they want to see funded. Voting is taking place online or at in-person voting sites set up across our city. The Participatory Budgeting Steering Committee has set an ambitious target of nearly 10,000 voters. I honestly don't believe we're going to hit that target this May. I hope we do. It's very ambitious. But with voting sites established, with dedicated city staff involved in outreach, with budget delegates committed to turning out votes, I know we can do direct grassroots democracy in Durham very, very well. So that's something I think we can do well. And now I want to turn to an area where I'm so proud that I believe Durham is doing the best work of anybody, where people are looking to emulate the incredible work that we are doing. Making the city we love a city for all means making the city we love a city of second chances. We all have a responsibility in this work. We need our employers to ban the box and hire more people who have criminal backgrounds. We need our landlords to be willing to rent to people with criminal backgrounds. If our neighbors cannot find work and they cannot find housing, how can we ever become the city we want to be? I want to tell you 2 ways that our city government is taking seriously our own responsibility to make Durham a city of second chances. The first is the Durham Expunction and Restoration Program, referred to commonly as DEAR. And I see our folks who make this happen right out in front of me. The city invested $250,000 this summer to create DEAR, which aims to remove barriers to employment and housing for individuals who are justice involved. Having a criminal record or a suspended driver's license makes it much harder for residents to find work and housing and to share in Durham's prosperity. These issues affect tens of thousands of Durham residents. Specifically, before I give you this figure, I'll just ask you what you think in your city. But let me just tell you this. There are 315,000 people that live in Durham County. I won't ask you to shout it out, but just think to yourself, how many of those 315,000 people do you think have a suspended driver's license? Just get a number in your mind. Okay? And then in a little bit, you can think about your own city in this regard. Over 50,000 of our neighbors have a suspended driver's license in Durham. 50,000 out of our 315,000 population. And I expect the number, you may not know it, most people don't, is similar in your city. Most of these suspended driver's licenses are for minor traffic violations, not involving DWIs. Over 100,000 of our neighbors have a charge on their criminal record eligible for expungement, which still shows up on background checks every time they apply for a job or go to rent an apartment. And to understand why this is a racial justice issue, 80% of these people are people of color. Prior to the creation of DEAR, our community was able to provide free legal assistance for driver's license restoration or expungements only to several hundred residents a year. As a result, thousands who live in low-income households, mostly Black and Latinx neighbors, suffer worse consequences for longer periods of time than others who are charged with similar offenses. How much longer? There are over 11,000 people in Durham with a suspended driver's license due to unpaid traffic tickets that are, on average, 16 years old. This is not and cannot be justice. We must do more to ensure that the legal relief provided under law is available to all of our residents, not just those who can afford a private attorney. The DEAR program is doing just that. As a result of DEAR, any person in Durham can visit our courthouse Monday through Friday to meet with a free attorney to expunge criminal charges to restore their driving privileges. As a result of DEAR, and this is truly worthy of our celebration, over 50,000 old traffic charges dating back to the 1980s, but still leading to driver's license suspensions, have been dismissed. 50,000 charges for over 35,000 people, and I'm very, very proud of that. In addition to getting these charges dismissed, the program is working now to waive fines and fees for 15,000 old traffic tickets that are on average 16 years old. This is transformative change for thousands of our neighbors. In the coming months, the program will work to achieve the same kind of success with expungement as we're seeing with driver's license restoration. Let me say that our DEAR work is also entirely consistent with holding people accountable for their actions. Everyone who is benefiting from the DEAR program has paid a very steep price. They have lost their license for at least 2 years, or they have served time in prison. To be a city of second chances, there must be an expiration date on what it means to hold someone accountable. Another way the city is demonstrating its commitment to make Durham a city of second chances is how we are welcoming people back home who have served time in our prisons. 700 people come back to Durham every year from state prison. And as part of the new program we are piloting, I've started writing letters to each of our residents returning from prison to welcome them back home. Reentry is hard, I share, but you are not alone. The letters are just one part of a larger program called Welcome Home, developed by our city's innovation team in partnership with Durham's local Reentry Council. In November, the program began welcoming back residents returning home from 3 nearby prisons. The city provides returning residents with care packages that include food, clothing, bus passes, and other basic necessities. We have also hired 2 peer support specialists who have lived experience of reentry and who work one-on-one with our returning residents to provide a trusted source of support and mentorship and to help connect them more quickly to resources at our local Reentry Council. We are starting to receive commitments from faith communities and other organizations to provide an ongoing supply of welcome home care packages. To make the city we love a city of all, a city for all, we must become a city that embraces second chances. And I submit that this is an issue for all of your cities as well. Take up the challenge. Go back home and figure out how your city can become a city of second chances. What I have described are the city's police reforms, our participatory budgeting, and the driver's license restoration and expungement work is a culture of innovation in city government. Some of this is driven by our incredible innovation team, which works across city government to help us innovate. But most of it is driven by people like you, simply innovating in your departments, figuring out how you can start an organics recycling program, or create a new water reservoir in your city in anticipation of climate change. This innovation is the lifeblood of city government. We must encourage, nourish, and protect it every day. That is how we're going to keep top talent like the people in this room working in city government. City government has a public mission that the private sector can't compete with. If we can offer our employees the chance to innovate, to advance that mission, city government will be attracting and keeping the best and brightest people like you all. Now I want to talk a minute about the future of our city and the opportunity to shape that future rather than simply submit to it. The issue that I hear about every day in some way or another, the issue that is on everyone's mind in every prosperous city in America, is the issue of gentrification and housing affordability. Sometimes I hear the statistics, but much more often I hear the stories. People tell me all the time they can't afford their rent and that they need to leave their downtown neighborhood and move farther out. Young people, young couples with middle-class jobs can't afford to buy a home in Durham. Our homeless advocates and rapid rehousing partners tell me they can't find places for their clients anymore. How can the city we love be a city for all if many low-income people, predominantly people of color, can no longer afford to live in the neighborhoods they have lived in for years, even decades? So as the Bull City turns 150 this year, we face two possible futures, and we get to choose between them. Our future, one future, is to continue doing all the good work we're doing on affordable housing, and we're doing a lot of it, and to know that that is not even remotely enough, and to watch as our downtown neighborhoods slip away, becoming even less affordable and richer and wider. But there's another possible future as well, and that's the future in which we choose to fight back. It's going to take a lot of money and a lot of years. But I believe this future is worth fighting for, and I challenge you here today to fight for this future in your city, because these challenges are yours as well. As I say, we're already doing a lot of affordable housing work in Durham, but here's the main thing you need to know. It's not nearly enough. If we do the affordable housing work we're doing now, funded at the same level, we will not significantly alter the future of downtown as the province of upper middle class white people, while people of color are pushed to the margins, farther and farther from good jobs and the public transit to get them to those jobs. Over the last year, our Community Development Department has put together a comprehensive 5-year affordable housing plan for our city. They've done a fabulous job, and I want to fund the plan, the whole plan. If we fund the whole plan, here's what we can do in 5 years. We can develop 30 acres of Durham Housing Authority property right in the core of downtown, replacing all 400 of the aging Housing Authority units for our residents who are most in need, and we can keep them living downtown. We will make these properties mixed income developments, ending the isolated poverty of Durham Housing Authority residents. Currently, our Durham Housing Authority residents, as the Housing Authority residents in your city, are bearing the double burden of poverty. Not only are they poor, but everyone in their neighborhood is poor, so they have no common resources to rely on. We will change this. We will fund the Housing Authority to build 900 new affordable units on their downtown properties, most of the units affordable to a family of 4 with an income of $48,000 or less. Plus, the Housing Authority will add 400 market rate units to create truly mixed income communities on these properties. Instead of a future where we surrender downtown to the richest buyers, we will create a multiracial downtown where people of limited means can live, work, and play. We will also prevent homelessness. We will also prevent homelessness, and we will house our homeless. Instead of a future of more and more homeless encampments, we will build out our new coordinated entry system so that there is a central front door to homeless services in Durham that is low barrier and accessible 7 days a week. We will invest in diversion that helps people in moments of housing crisis tap into their own resources. We will create a landlord incentive program to encourage landlords to house homeless people and people with Section 8 vouchers. We will expand street outreach so that single adults sleeping outside can get the resources they need. We will increase our supply of permanent supportive housing to house chronically homeless people with disabilities. We'll expand the home repair program to keep more long-term, low-income homeowners in their homes. We will create a citywide down payment assistance program offering $20,000 second mortgages to help low-income people purchase a home. We will continue our new funding of attorneys working with legal aid to represent renters in eviction cases so that we can reduce our community's high eviction rates and keep people in their homes. In short, in the next 5 years, we will add or preserve thousands of affordable units and divert hundreds of people from homelessness. We will act on a very large scale for a city our size. But this isn't just about the scale. It's also about where the housing will be. We will create an inclusive downtown, a racially diverse downtown, the impossible dream for growing American cities. We will choose the future that is worthy of a city that wants to live up to our claim to be a progressive beacon for the South and the nation. This affordable housing program will cost the taxpayers $95 million. It will leverage approximately another $450 million in spending and create thousands of jobs. What will this cost the individual taxpayer to do this? In plain English, if you own a $300,000 house in Durham, you will be paying about $45 per year to help provide housing for others and to help create the just community that we all want. It's a big lift, but it's time for our cities, all of our cities, to be doing this. And I know that Durham can do this, and I know that your city can do it as well. The only question is this: do we have the moral commitment and the political will? That's what we have to ask ourselves. If we can, if we do, we truly can make the cities we love cities for all. I want to tell you one story to end. On Durham's 150th birthday, April the 10th, 2019, we had, you may have heard about it on the national news, an explosion caused by a gas leak. It was a terrible explosion. Our firefighters, who I talked to afterwards, folks who'd been in our fire department for 33 years, said they'd never responded to anything like it in Durham. This explosion, I was at City Hall a mile away, and I turned to a person in my office and I said, I think a car has just smashed into City Hall. It was that sort of thing. This blast was enormous. When by chance, because it was our 150th birthday of our city and city employees were gathering at City Hall, and by chance our fire chief, Chief Zoldis, was there to MC the celebration because we had all of our historic firefighters' uniforms lined up in the lobby of City Hall, and he was going to tell the story of the fire department. So he just happened to be at City Hall. And Bo Ferguson, our deputy city manager, whose wife is here today, Bo was upstairs, and I went out in the hall. I said, what happened? And Bo said, there's been an explosion, a gas explosion on Duke Street. And we went downstairs. He said, would you like to ride over with the chief and me? I said, sure. So we rode over, and we got there very quickly. It was, as I say, not far from City Hall. And when we got there, there was an enormous blaze. Not just a huge smoke plume, not just a huge plume of smoke, but an actual enormous, enormous fire. There were firefighters standing next to that fire with their hoses on it. I got there early enough that I saw people bleeding, blood pouring from their head, some walking, some lying down, and with each of them was an emergency medical service medic already there on scene, working with each of them, calming them down, triaging, trying to figure out who needed to get quickly to the hospital and who we could wait on a little while. Our police department was there. They had set a perimeter, and they were making sure that what was happening, needed to happen with traffic needed to happen. Our firefighters had gotten there just in time. They had made sure, after there had been a call about the gas leak, and they had gotten there, and they had evacuated around 50 people, we don't know the exact number, from that building. The leak occurred in a coffee shop, and the coffee shop owner unfortunately did not leave in time, and when the explosion happened, he lost his life, as did one other person who was there on the street, a person from the gas company who was trying to come to turn off the gas. When the explosion happened, 9 of our firefighters were walking away to try to get a police officer to get that officer to come and get the owner of the coffee shop to leave. They needed him to come do that. They were walking away to do that. The fire knocked them down. They concussed them and blew them forward. One of them was very badly hurt. He's going to be just fine. Shrapnel in his leg. The others got up. They went to their truck. They got their fire hoses. They walked back and started putting this fire out as the other vehicles were coming in, as the emergency services personnel were arriving. I was there watching, and what I saw was not only the incredible courage of these firefighters, not only the amazing work by our emergency medical personnel, our police department, and others. I also saw the people who were coordinating this. I saw our emergency management director. I saw the police chief of police. I saw our fire chief. I saw our deputy city manager. I saw the 4 or 5 folks huddling together on a corner, asking each other questions. There was a school nearby. Has the school been told? Are they evacuating? Yes, it's been dealt with. All of our fire department folks are having to come downtown. Are we backfilling our fire departments from our other localities with whom we have agreements? Already happened. On and on and on. Questions, quick responses, and incredible coordination. I'm telling you this story because it was local government having to act in an extremely difficult crisis situation. In local government, we honestly don't have many crises if we're doing our work well. But this was a crisis, and what I saw was people acting at the highest level of performance. Their courage kicked in, and their professionalism kicked in, and it was an amazing sight. Local government is so amazing to watch as a mayor, not only in times of crisis, but in the daily work that you all do. So I want to thank you so much for doing it. I want to thank you for being with us here in Durham. Thank you for doing the incredibly important work you do on behalf of all our communities. Have a wonderful, wonderful day today.
Thank you so much, Mayor Schewel. Just a quick plug about EMS. Next week is National EMS Week. So I want to encourage everybody, when you go back to your respective towns and communities, to reach out to your people who serve us in our time of crisis. Too often we wait until after tragedy happens to truly recognize those folks. So do that. Be intentional in doing that. Call your chief, call somebody on the front line, and say thank you. All right, so Ben is going to come up. He's going to be setting up some things, but I do have a couple more announcements for us. Mayor Schewel's speech was a great segue. I want to highlight Bull City 150. They're outside in the lobby. They are lining up with our celebrating 150 years. The mission of Bull City 150 is to invite Durhamites to reckon with racial and economic injustices of the past 150 years and commit to building a more equitable future. So when you go out there in the lobby, you'll see essentially the history of Durham as it relates to housing in the housing market. That's a very big ticket item for everybody right now because what we're dealing with in affordable housing and some of the disparities we see in housing is a result of a lot of our past. So if you're here in Durham and you haven't seen it, go see it. If you're not from Durham, you can learn a lot from that. I also want to highlight Lucid Dream. Lucid Dream, they're based out of American Tobacco down here. If you go down to American Tobacco, not American Tobacco, American Underground. They have the street level corner office. They're super awesome, but they do a lot with virtual reality. And what they have set up outside in the lobby when we go out to the left is that they are helping us communicate in a very visual, interactive way what it looks like to diversify housing within neighborhoods to combat affordable housing and things of that nature. So please go out and check that out as well. Another announcement, I referenced your lanyard. Behind your name tag, there's going to be a ticket for if you put or specified in your registration if you are a vegan, vegetarian, or you're like a non-meat alternative. So there should be a ticket in your name tag for you to use at the food trucks that will give you access. You just simply give it to them, and that'll help you get your lunch. And we're going to go to public input.
You can move it. All right, so we've got a little interactive thing for you here this morning. Get you a little more awake. So first, we've got a couple questions to do. Our partner Public Input put together this text survey. So first, we want to get an idea of where everybody's at. So if you can text ELGL to 73224 and then answer this question, just give us your zip code, and it should auto-populate. Oh, there we go. I want to get an idea for where everybody came from. Is there a prize for who went the furthest?
You tell me, you're the sponsor.
We'll talk to Jay. We'll make sure whoever
We're trying to
traveled the
figure
furthest.
that out.
Oh man, Alaska, look at that. So as you can see, like ELGL has really grown. We started as just a group in Oregon, having lunch, and we've grown to a nationwide organization. So we're going to move on to question 2. If you haven't answered this one, you still can. We'll put this up somewhere. So now, question 2, test your knowledge. Our first event was way back in 2012. I had just graduated from undergrad. I don't know where you were at then. And we had 10 attendees. Back then, or how many attendees do you think are here tonight at ELGL 19? Which, I'll give you a hint, this is our biggest event ever. So go ahead and take a guess. We've actually had a few more registrations since we gave this answer to public input, so it's actually higher. Oh, did I go too far? Oh, it tells you.
So it sends the question, and then you respond.
Yeah, cool. All right, so question 3. How would you, so we had a whole workshop on innovation yesterday, and we've got a keynote on innovation coming up here. How would you describe innovation in your organization or in your local government? So we got 4 answers for you. Oh, is it just taking you through now? Oh, there's comments. Oh, there we go. See, this is user error on my part.
As you can see, public input is here on site for the entire conference.
Awesome. Further? Oh, there we go. Look at that. See, I need more training, Jay. Awesome. So we got a couple more for you, and then we'll move on. So tonight we have a happy hour at Highwire. We've got a question for you. It's a great local brewery. They're originally from Asheville that opened up a tap room in Durham, and it's in a historic building. Oh, look at that. Great turnout. Good. That's the kind of response we were hoping for. Oh, was I supposed to leave this one up? I don't know. There will be beer there. All right, perfect. Then there's there's a way to share comments as well. And if you guys have any questions or want to learn more about public input, Jay and his team are here all week. And there's also a super secret van that Eric's going to share here in a second.
So we've been making jokes about the van outside. They said it's a creeper van and it's parked in the bushes, but there's a VW bus parked outside, and the purpose that's the Gov Love Joyride podcasting van, and what we want everyone to do is to go out and record your local government stories. A big part of going forward is remember where you came from. Jay, do you want to say anything? Did you want to say anything? Sure. All right, yeah. We'll give it a public input.
So to make a long story short, a few weeks ago, I was on the GovLove podcast with Alyssa. My name is Jay Dawkins. This is Alyssa Denberg.
Hi, everybody.
And Alyssa had this wild idea of what if we did a StoryCorps like thing to interview people at the ELGL conference, let them share their story with other local government professionals. I thought that was a pretty cool idea, but then the idea kept going.
I was like, we were trying to figure out how we would do this. We're like, okay, we'll get some plexiglass. We'll build like a glass bubble that you do it. And I was like, what if we get a VW bus and we turn it into a recording studio? And Jay's like, okay, I like where we're going with this. So then during the meeting, we like pulled up websites, like how do we get a VW bus? So then Jay found a place. We have their card if you're interested in renting a VW bus or buying a VW bus. And yeah, so here we are.
Yeah. And so it's set up just out front of the convention center entrance by the waterfall. With some prompts for telling your story, and there's a little recording studio equipment in there. So between sessions or during the concurrent sessions, you're welcome to go out there. We'll set it up here in a few minutes, so hope to see you there.
Really quick, I just want to thank a couple people for making this happen. First of all, thank you, Public Input. They totally played along with my crazy idea and made it happen. Also, you'll notice some plants in the VW bus, and it's kind of an interesting story, but a resident of Durham let us borrow her plants to decorate it. Yeah, it's like the most Alyssa story ever. I found her on Facebook. So she didn't know about ELGL until yesterday. She like delivered them to the Innovation Summit yesterday. It's fine. So there is going to be a thank you card in the van. So when you participate, if you could write your name and the city that you're representing, I just think that it'd be really cool to give her a card that represents everybody that's here. So yeah, and thanks to ELGL for letting us do this.
Okay, good.
Give them a hand. As you can see, public input will go the distance for anybody that they work with. And also, just the lady giving the plants, that's just how Durham is. Yesterday, y'all got to experience our awesome weather. This morning, you got to experience our awesome mayor. And today, you're going to fall in love with our awesome people. And as you keep it going in and around the city, we also want to talk about social media. Of course, we're mobile friendly. Make sure you use the hashtag ELGL19. Okay, feel free to take as many pictures as you want, share, and help share the message and the things that you're learning here. And jump on into the keynote? Or say what? Okay. Yeah, so we're going to bring up Hana. Is she in the room right now? She's close? I can't see her. We're going to bring up Hana. Yesterday at our Innovation Summit, we really dug into her work. We used that as a foundation of all of the ideas that we generated. And she wrote a report called Getting the Work Done, What Government Innovation Really Looks Like. And what she did, she really spoke to some of the overarching issues and barriers that we have to doing the work that we do. So we're going to bring up Hana. She's going to be our speaker this morning. So give her a hand, please. Give her a hand.
Hi. Thank you. I kind of want to move here so I can vote in the next mayoral election. I don't know about you guys, but that was awesome. For the mayor. So how many, this may be a totally redundant question, but how many of you work in government? All right. Is there anyone who is government adjacent? No, this is like a hardcore government crowd. Okay. Who's on an innovation team? Okay. Who feels like they have a really good handle on what they're doing? There's always one. There's always one. You win. So you are not alone. I'll give you a little bit of my background and then get into this, talking about this report that we put out last year. So I worked in the private sector for about 15 years. I ran a user experience and design company. And about 3 years ago, I shut down my company to go work for the federal government as part of the United States Digital Service. I worked at the Department of Homeland Security with TSA and Customs and Border Protection. So if you want to know anything about airports, just ask me. I'd be happy to tell you. It was an incredible experience, and it was life-changing, but I kind of felt like I had no idea what I was doing. And at the end of my term, I wasn't really sure what I had accomplished. So I knew that whatever I did next, I wanted to spend some time understanding the public interest technology and government innovation landscape. And I was lucky enough to land at New America, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C. They were starting a public interest technology program, and I got this magic fellowship to do the research that I wanted to do. So today I'm going to talk through what that research looked like and what we found. So we started off doing a bunch of interviews at the federal, state, and local level. We interviewed people who were working in and around innovation teams. And then we did synthesis, and we broke up the sticky notes. And then we did more interviews, and then we did more synthesis, and then we did even more interviews. And then that amazing thing happened that happens in research, which is you realize you totally done everything wrong. And then we were asking all of the wrong questions. What we were looking for were tactics on how to get the work done from people who had everything all figured out. But what we discovered is that nobody has it all figured out, as we just saw in this room. However, we did start to see patterns, and another awesome thing that happens in research is that things start repeating. So 5 people all used the same phrase. A lot of people talked about being problem solvers, or a bunch of people said things like, people think I'm a magical genie, or it's not magic, or it is magic. So it's always interesting when those types of things come up. So we pulled back, stopped interviewing for a bit, and asked ourselves, well, what do we know now that we didn't know at the beginning of this process? And we made a list, and today I'm going to share 4 of those things that are so important that we think that everybody should know them. So the first is, success is not all champagne parties and people saying yay. Put another way, we tend to hear a lot of big, splashy stories about how everything was falling apart, and a team rushed in and fixed it, and now it's all better at the end. But the reality is very different. So, and I think that this is so cool because a lot of the teams that I talk to, I think, are here. So this is Mobile. I don't know, is the team, the Mobile team here? Yay, all right, nice. So in some cases, success is a really big deal. In Mobile, Alabama, the innovation team was brought on to work on blight. There are vast swaths of the city that are filled with vacant and abandoned properties like this one. People have left for a range of reasons. Property values are low, and the housing stock was entangled in this outdated series of property laws. Alabama is a property rights state, which makes it very difficult for property to change hands. So they also had a zillion other problems. There was no accurate count of the blighted properties. That had never been done. There was no standardization in reviewing properties. The code enforcement team was essentially operating off of how they felt about something. So it was kind of this opinion-based thing. And there was this blight task force that would meet to discuss which properties should be fined or slated for demolition. To be honest, this task force sounds a little bit like the third ring of hell. It's one of these, So it's one of these meetings where people would just like go round and round and round, and because Mobile is a small place, people would say like, oh, but that's my uncle's friend's Bob's house, and really he's gonna fix it up. So things just never moved past this task force. So the team started by standardizing how blight was assessed. They mapped the properties so they could see where the blight was concentrated. They reorganized the code enforcement department. And they ultimately worked with their local legislator to change a property law from Alabama's 1901 Constitution. So that is a big success story. But here's another success story, and this is my personal success story. So as I mentioned, I was on the Department of Homeland Security Digital Service team. And we were asked to work on global entry. So for those of you who travel internationally, global entry is the thing that allows you to get back into the country without having to go through passport control and customs. You don't have to wait on the line. So at the time, there were all kinds of problems at the airport. There were massive long lines at the TSA checkpoints, and so everybody was suddenly applying for pre-check and global entry, and as a result, there was a huge backlog in people who were applying for global entry. You have to have an interview, an in-person interview. In some cases, there was an 8-month wait to get this interview. So we were like, this is awesome, we're gonna go into the airport's a nightmare, we're gonna fix all of the things, we're gonna maybe make the whole experience of going through TSA better, and then we're gonna make the whole global entry application, maybe we're just take the whole thing online and do a Skype interview, and we're gonna re-engineer how the process works at each individual global entry interview center. And the global entry team was like, nah, you're not gonna do that. But why don't you start by just fixing our form and making the application process a little bit easier? So we're like, okay, we'll do that. So we went and we did some research at the global entry headquarters in the Ronald Reagan building in Washington, D.C., and we sat and we watched people come up for their interviews. And what we learned from that was that most people did not know the difference between global entry and pre-check. Pre-check is the thing that gets you through security without having to take your shoes off. Global entry, international flights. So people would wait 8 months for an interview for a thing that they didn't know what it was. And then they would get up to the front and say, do I get pre-check with this? So we thought, well, that's fairly easy probably to fix. So we went and we were curious, if I looked online for the answer to this question, what would I find? And the first thing that comes up is the TSA pre-check FAQ. And in it says, can I use TSA when flying from a US airport to a foreign country? And the answer was, yes, you can use pre-check to fly internationally. And what they mean is, yes, you can use it to get to your gate to fly to Paris. But not to do the thing that most people actually were asking about. So 3 months later, after many, many calls, the little corollary here is that TSA and CBP are housed in the same agency, but they don't like each other. So they didn't want to talk, and TSA had actually purposely not provided a link to CBP's global entry program because they were against it. 3 months later, after much conversation, TSA changed 3 lines in their FAQ. And this was a huge win. This was amazing. I wanted to just run through the streets and be like, we did it. So even though it felt small, realistically, first of all, it took a ton of work, and second of all, we got agencies who didn't really like each other to at least talk to each other and acknowledge that they were both players in the airport. And third, this was a change that could potentially affect millions of travelers. So some other things that are successes. Getting multiple agencies to use the same Google Sheets doc. Syracuse team is here somewhere, I think, right? That's you guys. Getting people from different agencies who don't like each other into the same room at the same time. Probably everybody has had that experience. Adding one sentence to an envelope, something that both the UK and Anchorage, right there. Sorry, this is cool. I don't get to like actually see people's faces, so I'm just getting excited about seeing the people who actually did these awesome projects. Creating a way for residents to text a request for a form, and getting someone who really isn't into this whole service delivery thing to return your calls. So a lot of the time, the rest of the world doesn't understand why these are successes. They'll say, great, government is functioning. They should have been doing that all along. But the truth is that the stories with big splashy endings are built on a million smaller steps, and that we need to celebrate those too. These little small steps might not get written up in the media, but they're huge internal wins. And in a field where it can be hard to come by, it's important that we celebrate these. So the second thing that I want to share with you is that there's no best when it comes to team structure. So interestingly, this is something that people asked me as I was doing the interviews, is what's the best way to structure an innovation team? So we found several different models. One is pivoting the IT team to an innovation team. One is working across agencies on a specific issue. Working across agencies on multiple issues. Embedding within an agency. Offering citywide training and help. And my favorite, accidentally hire one person who really gets it and let them do their best. Turns out the last one is a really good way to get someone to rage quit. So pivoting the IT team, this is something that, so New Orleans has one of the older innovation teams out there. The former CTO, Lamar Gardere, started out basically as the email guy. He would try something new, and people would say, that's great, but my email doesn't work. So he realized that they had to get the basics down, and once they got the basics down, they were already positioned in this cross-agency role. So they were able to see an overview of what was happening in multiple agencies across the city. This does require that somebody on the IT team be versed in something beyond IT. So Lamar also had a knowledge of service design and human-centered design. So that enabled his team to go in and start working beyond IT. So eventually, once the email did work, they were able to pivot. So working across agencies on a single issue. These are the Bloomberg I teams. The team in San Jose, California also functions this way. These teams are highly focused, and they're able to make significant progress. In the case of the Bloomberg teams, they're aligned with a single mayoral initiative. We heard the mayor talking about people returning justice-involved residents, reintegrating with the community, which is what the team here is focused on. Other teams are focused on reducing blight, reducing the murder rate. And these teams work to unpeel the onion across an entire city government. So that could be reorganizing a department, reorganizing forms, changing how repair trucks are stacked, rewriting call center scripts. The problem with this approach is that, or I should say the challenge, is that it imposes external innovation. So the teams aren't necessarily invited in. They just show up and are like, hi, we're here to offer you some innovation. And the people to whom the innovation is being offered might not always be receptive. One of my favorite stories about this was actually also from the Mobile team. In order to get in with code enforcement, they said that if the code enforcement team washed their cars on Tuesday, we washed our cars on Tuesday. So it's a lot of finding a foot in the door The advantage is that in some cases, the people on the team are already civil servants. So in San Jose, for example, they were able to set a list of priority projects across multiple agencies, and then they pulled people who were already in government to work on them. So they didn't have to show up and say, people weren't saying like, oh, why are these outsiders coming in to fix my government? So another model is working across agencies on multiple issues. So this is sort of a consulting model. This is something that's used at the federal level at USDS and 18F. Boston, another one of the oldest innovation teams, also uses this model, as does Orlando. So in this case, the teams live as a separate entity. They are the innovation team, and you can bring them on to work on things. So the advantage is that work is centralized in one location, and you can reuse solutions or learn from the work. But it is a constant hunt for work because it's this team just sort of out in space, and people don't necessarily know about them or know how to use them. Embedding within an agency. So at the federal level, these are USDS agency teams, like the team that I was describing at the Department of Homeland Security. In California, the Child Welfare Agency has their own digital service that focuses exclusively on work for that agency. In New York, the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity has an innovation team that focuses exclusively on the work that that agency does. So the advantage is these teams can go very deep within an agency because they're embedded and because they're part of the agency. They get used. They're not looking for work. It's just obvious. However, the work is siloed, so they are within their agency. And if there's another agency in the government that could really benefit from a tool that they built, it's hard to do that sharing and to find out that need exists. So once people get started doing this work, they very quickly realize that to make change at scale, it has to be more than just them and their team, that they need to offer training and tools for changing the culture. And we've seen that manifest in a number of different ways. One of the teams that is doing this in a really interesting way is New York City's Service Design Studio. So this was an offshoot of the Mayor's Office for Economic Opportunity. They had an innovation team, but they felt like their reach was limited. So they thought, what's something lightweight that we can do every week? And they hit on this idea of office hours. So they opened up their doors to the whole city. Anybody could sign up. And they were telling me about this idea before they did it. And I was like, that is never going to work. Like, who is going to sign up for office hours for a thing that they don't know in an agency they don't work with? Turns out they have been overwhelmed. They are booked out months in advance. They get people from all over the city. The day that I sat in with them to see the kinds of problems that they were getting in the door, they had people come in, ask for help with RFPs. They asked for help with user research. This guy came in from the Department of Health who wanted to make it easier for people to report animal bites. This whole, vision of the city comes in through their door. So it's really been a great way for them to do some light touch innovation across the whole city. A few other places where people have taken similar approaches. In San Jose, they've been offering training in Scrum to non-technical teams across the city. Gainesville brought in IDEO to talk to people about talk to civil servants about how they could be more citizen-focused. In New Jersey, they are also starting a digital service effort where they're looking at starting to offer training for people across the government. So those are all of the different models that people are using, but here's the dirty little secret. The team structure doesn't really matter. The most successful teams have one single thing in common, and that is support from the top. And I'm going to make a leap that if you're in this room, you likely have some good support from the top because you have somebody who thought it was important for you to attend this conference. If this doesn't resonate, look for support from the top. That's where the success lies. So in practice, that looks like the mayor, city manager, CTO, or CIO feels that things must change and gives people permission to operate differently. So the third point is that it is not about the technology. So technology can be a way in. It can be an easier sell. A lot of people equate innovation with technology. I'm here to tell you that the two are not related. I love this quote. You can't sell people on all management things are terrible. You can sell modernizing technology in government. So in some cases, teams are able to get a foot in the door by saying, hey, we can help you with that app, or hey, we can help you with that form. And it seems like it's a tech-focused thing, but it's actually sort of a sneaky way to get into service design. The reality is that tech is the easy part, and the hard part is everything else. So the team in Memphis discovered that there were a large percentage of non-emergency calls coming in to EMS, and that the call volume was rising. They had 25,000 non-emergency calls last year, 20% of all calls, which was 20% of all calls. 400 people who called 911, and sorry, of that 20%, or 400 people, were calling into 911 4 or more times a week. So they convened people from the tech sector to work on this problem. They described what the problem was, and they asked for a solution for these 400 frequent callers. And they gave everybody an hour. And after an hour, every single person in the room said, well, you need an app. An app, not an app. They tried again. They maybe also needed an app. So then they tried this whole process again, and they made it a 3-day workshop. They visited dispatch, they visited the paramedics, the clinics, and what they learned is that those 400 people who were calling in 4 or more times a week don't have smartphones. So that time around, they did not have any tech solutions. So what I love about that story is it shows that with more time, you can be more creative, and and you don't necessarily come up with a tech solution. With less time, the easy answer is technology. So I have been working with the mayor's office in New York City on creating a possible way for residents to access documentation across city agencies so that they don't have to submit things multiple times every time they apply for a city service. And we have been working for a few months to try to figure out which agency we want to start this project with. We started looking around in February. It is now May. Hopefully next week we are going to have a decision. But we may reach a point where the amount of time that we spend getting people to agree on things takes longer than it does to build the thing. That's okay. Oh, sorry. But it's just another example of the tech is not the thing we're worried about. The thing we're worried about is getting everybody in the room, getting everybody to agree to be on this project, getting everybody to be excited about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so the last thing is that this work is hard and that people leave. We discovered this in the process of doing these interviews, that we would go back and interview people like 6 months later, and a lot of them left. A lot of people feel really isolated and alone. This quote from Harlan Weber, who is at the Massachusetts MBTA, I think speaks to the way a lot of us feel, which is that it requires a lot of effort to be connected. Most of our jobs are delivering things for others, but it's hard to stay connected to each other. The kind of crazy thing about this is that people are working on a finite set of problems and want to connect. We discovered that there are 2 kinds of problems that people are working on. There are vertical problems and there are horizontal problems. So vertical problems are these issue-specific things like child welfare or blight or affordable housing. These are the kinds of teams that are sort of digging deep on a certain issue area. But people are also working on horizontal problems, which is coordinating across departments and agencies, or how to structure a digital service. HR comes up time and time again, how to bring the right people into this kind of work, especially when it might take a year to bring them in. When to build something in-house versus when to find an existing solution. Procurement, big sigh. That came up in almost every interview that we did. Everybody is wrestling with procurement. So at New America, we, I apologize. Sorry, I'm talking off of an old version of this, so I got a little confused. So at New America, we are not just interested in surfacing these issues, but we also are working to connect people. So one of the things that we do to do that is we put out a monthly publication for practitioners. This was last month's, which was the Parks and Rec issue. We started with a list of 150 people who we just kind of knew, and it's grown to almost 800 subscribers in 11 issues. Our most recent issue just came out today. It's the therapy issue. So if you need a little therapy or want to commiserate a little bit, please check it out. And please subscribe at We Are Commons. But even though the work is hard, many people feel that the payoff is worth it. This is a quote from Marina Martinizzi, who was the former CTO at U.S. Veterans Affairs, who said, "In my very darkest moments, I would remember that the people I was trying to help in many cases literally gave their lives for me. So the least I could do was be super stressed out for 4.5 years." Right? And finally, while the work is hard and success is slow and people quit, and hopefully this talk was not a big downer, it's worth it. And ultimately, the field is growing. So when I started this research, there was only one state-level digital service team, and today there are 5. California, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Colorado. And it seems like every few weeks I hear about a new team somewhere. We did a webinar a few weeks ago, and people were chatting on the the little chat window as the webinar was going on. And actually the people who hosted the webinar said they'd never seen so active a chat, because people were just like, "Hey, I'm the innovation guy in South Dakota." And everybody was like, "Welcome, innovation guy from South Dakota. I'm the innovation person in a small town in Texas." So these teams are popping up. These individuals are popping up. It's sometimes hard for us to find each other, but we're out there and we're really supportive. And personally, I will say that this work feels like a privilege to me. You get to pull back the hood and see the inner workings of cities and states and the nation. I got to attend a naturalization ceremony. I got to go to the dump in Phoenix, which, by the way, if you've never been to a landfill, and I'm kind of going to guess that probably some people in this room have been to a landfill, but if you haven't, you should go. It's like this life-changing experience. I will, quick sidebar, because I think I have a little bit more time, and I did want to tell this story. I spent some time in Phoenix recently with the Public Works team, who are doing incredible things. And they took me out to the landfill. So Phoenix is focused on sustainability, in part because they were named the least sustainable city in America. As you might imagine, they didn't like that. So they immediately started taking on some different projects to tackle that. And so one of those is around what they put into the landfill. I wish I had my slide that had it. I have an awesome picture. I'll have to share with you later of just the scale of this landfill. So the landfill is 50 miles outside of the city. They have long-haul trucks that drive 1 million tons of garbage a year to the landfill. So the Public Works team looked into what their diversion rate was, what the percentage of things that could get diverted from the landfill, and they had a 13% diversion rate in 2013. So they set a goal of a 40% diversion rate by 2020, which is coming up soon, and they expect to hit it. So some of the challenges that Phoenix faces, they can't pass a plastic bag ban. A nearby city attempted to pass a plastic bag ban, and before it could even happen, just like the idea that there would be a plastic bag ban, they banned plastic bag bans. They can't fine people for not recycling. They kept saying, well, we're not Portland. I guess Portland is like the pinnacle of recycling. So they had to be really creative. Basically, they were like, how do we divert 40% of things from the landfill with no budget and no resources? So what they did was this waste composition study where they looked to see what was in the garbage. And they went line item by line item to figure out what they could do with each item, whether they could sell it, whether they could compost it, whether they could recycle it. There is a whole side story about mattresses and palm fronds that I would love to share with you at another time. But so far, the most effective thing that they've done is handing out little slips of paper that essentially grade people's recycling. So they have teams in pilot areas who go around, will look at the recycling, and will say, check, you did it, or X, you didn't do it, and here's what you did wrong, which actually I think is the coolest part, because I live in New York, and I have zero idea what I'm supposed to recycle. We don't even have we don't even have single strand recycling. You have to we have to separate things out, and when you live in a small apartment, it's not ideal. So my kids are super confused. Like, can you recycle the blueberry containers, little plastic things? I say yes. My mother says no. When they go to her house, they try to put it in the recycling. She yells at them. Anyway, so Phoenix has solved this problem by giving you this really easy slip to read that says, here are the things that you did wrong, do better next time. And that has been their most effective thing they've done. It's been a slip of paper, which is why I love this project. So before they started this pilot program, in one area they had the recycling was over 70% contaminated, so they couldn't take it because there were things in there that had to be pulled out. After running this program, 70% of the recycling in that same area was good to go. I also love that they did not write a single line of code for this, and it was the ultimate in a paper-based solution. So coming back to sharing this work and telling these stories, going to see the dump in Phoenix was awesome. It really just feels like you are pulling back the curtain on Oz. And if you are the kind of person who likes to understand why things work the way they do so that you can make them work better, there's something really, really satisfying, even though this work is hard, at seeing what's behind that curtain, because only then can you fix it. So finally, we know that this work grows through exposure. So if you like this talk, and you want to package it up and hand it to someone, or to your boss, or to somebody at another table, or to somebody in another government, or someone who's in a position to think differently about what innovation in government looks like, we wrote a book just for that purpose, actually more like a booklet. You can read it on a plane. The Government Fix has a lot of the stories that I shared today and more, and it's a great way to help people understand what you're doing, why it's important, and why there should be more of it. Thank you so much. Thanks for the work that you do, and thank you for your time today. Are we taking questions, I think?
Sure, we have time. Y'all had to shout it out unless you want to see me run across the room. Yes, sir.
You mentioned New Jersey a few times. What level of government and what is that work like?
Yeah, so New Jersey is starting a state-level innovation team. It's a partnership with Rutgers, so I think they're partially in Trenton and partially in New Brunswick. Are you from New Jersey? It's a very small team, and it's like just getting going, but it's aligned with some mayoral initiatives, or sorry, gubernatorial initiatives.
Another question? You gonna see me around?
I was just curious if you could expand on how many hours it took for the Phoenix team to do that, or just what the ROI, or clearly they were awesome, but what was the process to make that happen? In terms of budget, because you said they didn't have budget or resources.
Yes. So the head of public works is amazing. You know, I talked a little bit about having support from the top, and one of the things that they have in Phoenix is the mayor, who they just changed mayors, but the previous mayor was a huge champion of innovation, and the public works director is also a huge champion of innovation. So basically said to their teams, do what you got to do, and I believe that it's going to work. This program that I talked about was actually not something that they came up with. There are other cities that do it, and I'm blanking on the name of, Oops, Shine On. It's called Oops, Shine On, and I think that it had also been done in Atlanta. So they partially just looked around to see, like, what are things that we can pull from. They also partnered with ASU to try to figure out how they could monetize some of the stuff they were diverting from the landfill. It's still a work in progress. The thing that I loved about that was that they did this waste composition study to be like, okay, let's get a baseline of like every single thing that's in the garbage, which I think, was really sort of the beginning of this innovative thinking of like, we'll take every single thing and figure out what we can do with it.
I was just curious, in your research, about how many innovation teams or governments did you talk to, and about how long did it take?
I guess I neglected to mention that. We interviewed about 70 innovation teams over the course of about a year. So, and some of them we interviewed multiple times to get deeper stories around specific projects.
So we don't have an issue at my city with people recycling. We have an issue with a lot of wish cycling, where they're just throwing everything.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the issues we've had is we contract out to Rumpke, is who collects everything. We've really had some resistance from them to give us a sheet like, I think you said Phoenix, gives people saying, nice try, here's how you can do better. Do they have anything like that? Because Rumpke's mindset is, we have a list of what can be recycled. It's just thousands of items long, and it's going to overwhelm people. So they just don't want to give it out at all. So we're trying to get that going. We're trying to get composting going and all of that stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just having issues with people are recycling too much and kind of ruining the batch, and it's going to the landfill anyway.
Right, wishful recycling. They have that in everywhere, I think. The first thing that Phoenix did was something called Top 10 in the Bin, where they figured out, because, there are, the item list is overwhelming, so they thought from a human-centered design perspective, what's the maximum number of things that you could realistically keep in mind that you can recycle, and they focused exclusively on that. So the first step was this Top 10 in the Bin program. I think that, if you should reach out to them if if you want more information, I love Phoenix, but I'm definitely not the head of their public works team. But I do want to point out that this is one of the things that we are trying to do. This is like why I'm up here telling these stories, is because these connections are so hard to make, and it's so hard to find out. Like, sure, everybody wants to know how you can divert more from the landfill, but those stories are hard to get out there. And I will say that I had some delusions of grandeur when I started this project around how to get these stories in the national media, which has slowly been happening. And actually, Phoenix is one that I'm going to be that's going to be published soon. But that, as probably a lot of people in this room know, the media isn't clamoring for stories about how government functioned. So sometimes they can be a little challenging to get out there.
So different kind of question. Over here. Hi. Hannah.
Oh, yes. Oh, hi. Thank you.
Have you or others looked at interjurisdictional kinds of groups like councils of government or state-level municipal leagues or county associations, because those folks often have staff who want to help communicate across and get innovations from one place to another. In fact, it can be part of their service and their credit for really being that kind of connector.
Yeah, we have not had the chance to talk to county level people. I think that you're exactly right. That would be a really interesting place to find out where those kinds of cross-pollination things are happening. I will say that there are a fair number of people who have identified this as an issue and are working towards it. And I mean, obviously this organization, ELGL is one of those, but that it's kind of a big problem. Like, this is a big country. There are a lot of people to connect. There are a lot of people who just don't even know about each other. There isn't really even there's not a professional association for government innovators that, there's Alliance for Innovation, but beyond that, there isn't even really like why aren't there 1,000 people in this room? For example. So yes, I would love to talk to counties and see what kind of work is being done. We haven't done that yet.
Hi, thank you so much for talking to Anchorage and for your presentation. I was curious, if you had a magic wand, how would you increase replication of projects across cities? The communication is great. Are there any other magical wizard ideas you have for this?
Yeah, well, I wish there was, in part because I'm a tech person, but I wish there was like Google for city projects where you could because actually one of the things we heard is that people do try to create Google for city projects, that they will say like, Blight, and I heard that Cleveland did something. So I wish that there were some kind of repository where people could search and be connected and read up on these case studies. The Phoenix thing is a good example because they took this thing that had already been created wholesale and just like lifted it and shifted it into Phoenix, which is awesome. And there are so many, I guess maybe if I had a magic wand, there would be an organization that helps cities to package stuff up in a way that it can just be shipped to other cities really easily. If anyone wants to do that.
Hi, question. Earlier you touched on, or I'll stand up.
Sorry, I'm having thank you.
You touched on kind of like burnout and turnover from some of the teams you've talked to. Did you ever get a sense of where those people end up going? Like what kind of organizations people in this line of work are losing employees to?
Yeah, I would say that it's mixed. I think that people who do this work and then feel tired and like they need a break, some people just take a break and come back. But I think it's a struggle for people who want to continue to do something meaningful and something that feels like it has impact, but don't want to drive themselves crazy. I think it is a challenge to find where they can do that isn't government. I have definitely seen people go to the private sector and feel like this is stupid. What am I doing here? And want to come back. But I think it's a little bit of a push-pull. It's like a little bit of a balancing act to figure out what's the level of crazy that I can live with, and where I don't, drive myself to exhaustion, but where I'm still feeling like I'm doing something meaningful. And actually, in this issue of the Commons that we just put out today, I did an interview with a workplace psychologist who had I kind of thought, like, he's not going to offer anything that I don't already know. But he did. He offered some really good, like, some of it is just around setting boundaries and setting realistic expectations, and even things just like eating healthy, which was like, come on, eating healthy is not going to help me with my job. But people who we interviewed who have not burned out did those things. They were like, I'm really careful to eat healthy. I make sure that I, go to my Tuesday night basketball game. So I think that's one of the things that people can do to not burn out. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Any more questions? Okay.
I definitely think it's something, as you mentioned on one of your slides, to give permission to do things differently. I'm wondering, in all of your conversations with all of your teams and governments, whether what good examples of actually kind of going beyond that and encouraging or expecting people to do things differently you saw in any of those organizations. I think it's important maybe even go beyond permission if you can at the top of an organization and have that be an expectation.
Well, so I definitely think one of the advantages to, when I talked about the different models, one of the advantages to having a separate innovation team is that I think there is an expectation that you guys are going to do something that people haven't really thought of. You're going to break the rules. You're, going to come up with some really out-of-the-box ideas. So I think that is sort of inherent in the formation of an innovation team. I would say that is perhaps less true when the innovation team is sort of more baked into the agency, although now that I'm saying that, I think if your team has innovation in the name, the expectation is that you're gonna do, yes?
Just to clarify, I wasn't speaking about the innovation team itself, but the whole organization.
Uh-huh.
So obviously it is the job of an innovation team to innovate, but I'm thinking more about organizational culture level. Did you see things in organizations where across the board, not just with the team, it was that?
I see what you're saying, yeah, where people did things that were like the management, the top layer sort of set the expectation of, I think I would have to interview mayors to find out more about that. The people that we interviewed were the people who had been given permission or who had the expectations. So, yeah, I think we'd have to do more research probably.
More questions? Going. So, thank you so much, Hana.
All
Give her a
right,
hand,
thank you.
please. Give her a hand. All right, how's everybody feeling? Good? Okay. One thing that is going to be going on in the hallway near the registration desk is ELGL is crowdsourcing the vision statement. So we want everybody to contribute to that. When you go out here, turn to the right. It's on your right. You can't miss it. It's on the wall. It's massive. Yes, we need everybody's input for that. Right now it's 10:30. The first breakout start at 10:45 in 15 minutes. So you're going to get some time. Let me read to you where these are right now. So to my right and your left, which is that way, right? My right and your left, that is the Foster Street hallway. That is where the strategy and performance track and the equity and economic inclusion tracks are going to be taking place. So each one of the tracks is going to be in the same room all day, right? Same hallway, yeah. So if you pick a track, you'll be in that room. And then on the opposite end, which is the Moore Street hallway, my left, your right, is the innovation and process improvement, and also the workforce of the future tracks. Okay? Innovation and workforce, strategy and equity. Strategy and equity, innovation and workforce. Strategy and equity, innovation and workforce. All right, that was more so for me than for you. So enjoy your break, take your 15 minutes, connect with people, share, connect with people, connect with people, connect with people.